From MPB Think Radio, this is Mississippi Education Connection, a show dedicated to providing resources for teachers, parents, and students. Most governments around the world have closed educational institutions in an attempt to contain the spread of the coronavirus. And these closures are impacting over 90% of the world's student population. Today, we will sit down with Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann to discuss how COVID-19 has impacted the legislature's plans for education, ways in which they're connecting with educators and students, and what the future may hold for all Mississippians. You can be a part of our show today by calling 1-877-MPB-RING. That's 1-877-672-7464. That is the number. Go ahead and get those calls ready. The lines will be full today, correct?
Absolutely. And the Lieutenant Governor has worked with us for a couple of years on the promote the vote, and encouraging and educating students across the state and classrooms across the state, getting teachers and students engaged in the election process and what it means and how it actually works. And so, but he has been a big supporter of MPB in terms of working with us and having a partnership. And we're happy to partner on these. And he's receiving lots of cool responses from students across the state that are very encouraging. These students are very smart. And so we're just happy to have him on today to share, because he's very engaged with teachers across the state. And that's what he does. As the Secretary of State, he did it, and he's continuing to do that today.
As Lieutenant Governor, I love that. And last week we did read some stories. We're going to read a few later on when we have Lieutenant Governor on the line. Those stories they're so real and so organic. The students asking them a question and getting their perspective of how they're dealing with COVID-19 and being at home and being quarantined and not being in a brick and mortar school building. It's interesting to see their take on it. You know,
the goal for the Lieutenant Governor was to hear the student voices, have them speak to lawmakers. What would they say to lawmakers if they had an opportunity to come to the Capitol and talk to them? And so it's very enlightening what they have to say, what they think, and it's also helping them to get their feelings out and to put it on paper.
Oh, I can't wait to ask him how that idea came about and the whole nine. And then again, it's probably molding some young politicians as well, getting them ready for politics.
Yes.
Again, the number to call today if you'd like to speak with Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann, or have a question for Tara or a great comment about what you're doing in this COVID-19 pandemic as a teacher or student. If you want to give us a call, again, that's 1-877-MPB-RING. That's 1-877-672-7464. Now, of course, as we promised, we bring you cool stories each week and tips of the week from our education department here at MPB. And our cool story this week comes out of Vicksburg. I love this story, Tara. When I saw it on the news actually earlier this week, I'm like, I have to tell
it's a great story.
Everybody about it. Well, it's called Adopt a High School Senior Program. It came out of Vicksburg when two cousins, Don Stevenson and Tiffany Howard, began to realize their children and their classmates weren't going to have a natural end to their senior year. And again, our condolences goes out to all the seniors all across the Mississippi and the country, not just Mississippi, the country. Everybody's dealing with the same thing. So they decided to create a Facebook group page called Adopt a High School Senior. Vicksburg and Warren County class of 2020. So they saw it as a way to help recognize area seniors who were deprived of prom, the traditional graduation walk, and all other festivities normally afforded to a typical graduating high school student. Now, the group has quickly grown to over 3,000 members that quick in 1 week, and includes all 5 area high schools, even young people graduating from homeschooling as well. Now, the members, if you join this group, you have an opportunity to adopt a young person. You can give them gifts. You can give them, nice little things for graduation, and you can become a mentor. In the future, you can mentor them in college, and you can continue. That relationship can build for years, a lifetime. Imagine that. 2020, COVID-19 hit, your relationship bonded, and then 20 years later, you're watching that senior grow up and be successful, and you had a part in that. Wonderful. Again,
great
that
story.
That website is Adopt a Senior, Vicksburg and Warren County Class of 2020 on Facebook. I will post that link on our podcast if you want more information on it.
Yeah, speaking of seniors and celebrating them, I spoke last week about something that we are trying to do or planning to do in education, and we're going to celebrate our high school seniors this year.
All right.
So in a couple of weeks, we're going to have a program. It's going to be a virtual prom, yearbook pictures, and if you didn't buy a prom dress, or we know they didn't rent tuxedos and hold on to them, just get dressed up and send us your pictures. So follow us on our Facebook page at MPB Education, so you can find out when we're going to get started. So you can start picking the dress, picking your makeup, however you want to get all dressed up, and what your favorite picture for your yearbook to share with Mississippians. And let us just celebrate you and have a good time. So follow us on MPB Education on Facebook and Instagram to find out when the entries can start being submitted. So we're excited about this program.
Can adults submit? Can I come to the virtual prom?
Well, you can come and look at the pictures, Michelle.
I want to put on my tiara, my dress, and relive my prom days.
Well, we're going to let the 2020 high school seniors have this year.
You know, some parents out there reliving their high school day. Oh, I remember when,
yes.
and, telling it. But it was another quick story before we take our first break. A stepfather, actually, and I don't want to say step, because I'm sure he's been in her life for a long time. He did the little card and asked his daughter to the prom, and she just boo-hooed, and he danced with her in the living room. They had the decorations on the wall, I think they had the disco ball. She dressed up, she had her tiara on, he had his suit on. That is what I'm talking about.
Creativity.
It doesn't have to be a lot, but just creating that moment. And we talked about this last week, Tara. It's memories. And I've heard a lot of seniors say it's not about just graduation, about prom. It's about the memories that those experiences create.
Right.
And that memory, the memory of not having it, will carry on. The memory of COVID-19, the pandemic, school shut down. Oh my God. We want to kind of offset the bad memories maybe, or the not so good memories, with good ones.
And just give them the experience of going through the dressing up, the making the best of it, of this time, because the goal is to just continue on and to create the good memories and with their families, and we celebrate it with friends and other Mississippians across the state.
True. And don't forget, guys, if you want to have a little small get together at your house, 10 or more, and just be very cautious, be careful. 10 or less. I said 10 or more. Thank you, Tara. 10 or less, but be cautious and careful. I know a lot of people, especially right now, want to celebrate their seniors and have parties at their home. I know the governor, we're going to talk to him about the relaxing of the state laws in just a week, actually. But we want everybody to be careful and still practice social distancing at the utmost, because we want you guys to be careful. We're going to take our first break of the show, and when we return, we'll welcome Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann. Phone lines are open, so give us a call at 1-877-MPB-RING. That's 1-877-672-7464. Stay tuned. This is Mississippi Education Connection, only on MPB Think Radio.
Allison Walker, the Lady Auto Mechanic, host of AutoCorrect. If you're enjoying this podcast, try my podcast, AutoCorrect. We help steer you in the right direction with your car problems. Find me on any podcast platform or at autocorrect.mpbonline.org.
This is an MPB Think Radio podcast.
Good morning. This is Mississippi Education Connection. I'm your host, Michelle McAdoo, along with my co-host, Tara Wren, Director of Education here at MPB. And good morning, Tara, again.
Good morning.
And today we are talking with Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann. He's going to talk to us about the legislature's plans for education in Mississippi, talk about broadband, talk about how he's connecting with educators and students around the state, plus more. So let's not prolong any longer. Let's welcome to the show our guest for today, Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann.
Hey, how are y'all?
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Just down at the Capitol, social distancing.
Oh, you are out and about. We were just talking about you during the break. I was wondering, are you still at home? I noticed you've been doing.
No, we go downtown. We come down to the Capitol because there's just about 2 staff members and a guard down here, so
that's enough social
we can take a whole floor to ourselves.
Well, speaking of that, how have you been doing and adapting to all of this?
I think it's very difficult because we see we see the fact that we're usually finishing. I know y'all were talking a minute ago about people going to the prom. Well, we usually are finishing our budget right now, and schools would have the numbers on how much is going to be allocated to them to spend, and teachers' salaries would be able to be set, and all the things that go with over $2 billion is allocated to schools by the legislature. Well, we're not going to do that till June now. So it's just it's very difficult to try to manage the money when we don't know how much money there's going to be. And it's just like every other business in Mississippi is going through, and every other household. Our income is cut and our expenses are the same. So it's a very difficult time right now.
Wow. Will that have a large or lasting effect on the educational system in Mississippi?
Not lasting for certain, and as to what, if any, as you know, education is my top priority, and the first bill we passed out of the Senate this year was as a teacher pay raise, and so our goal is not to have any adjustments in what we were doing for education. What we'll find out shortly is how much money we have. Certainly, there are other things that I'm certainly going to address long before I ever get to education. It'll be the last thing on the table.
All right. Well, as we know, everyone knows, the governor announced last week that the schools will remain closed for the remainder of the year. Now, he also stated that it was a very hard decision, one he wished he did not have to make. But many groups of educators around the state wonder why the decision wasn't made sooner. Can you address that?
Oh, I don't know about the timing. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of discussion, should you have closed the state earlier? Should you have waited longer? There is no roadmap here. There's no course, no book on how you to do this. We are in a once in a lifetime, hopefully never an event, and I don't think it's healthy for us to go back and second guess about we should have done it a day earlier. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, the result's the same. I think the main focus is to stay focused on the fact that everybody's trying to do the best they can. And we can add up the score next year or the next year when they look back on how everybody handled the pandemic. But I don't see. I think those are small things when we got really big things to worry about. And those big things to worry about is making sure our kids get an education, that our healthcare system provides healthcare for people who are sick and need healthcare, and that our people are safe. Those are the priorities that we ought to have.
Well, Lieutenant Governor, we know that you engage with teachers throughout the year around the state. And as I mentioned earlier, when Michelle and I were talking, we've worked together with your office, even as Secretary of State and now as Lieutenant Governor, on just some programs where you engage with teachers. So you're talking with teachers and students all the time. What are they saying to you about this current situation?
Well, it's a whole gambit. I'm in class every day. I was in an AP history class. I've been in a math class. I've been in a Spanish class, which I'm glad I didn't have to take the exam on that one. I have been with 2-year-olds yesterday. Second graders yesterday from Oxford. I was in groups in Scott County, Columbus, Hernando, Wayne County in South Mississippi, Hattiesburg. We're in class with all of these kids, and we watch the teachers teach. And then we talk to them about what we're doing in the legislature, and then we ask questions. I've done dozens of these around the state. Virtually every day I'm in class 2 or 3 times a day.
Wow.
And as part of that, I learn a lot, and I started asking the last few days, how is this going? You know, teachers, if you'd ask a teacher in September and tell them they were going to be teaching all their courses online in March, they'd tell you you couldn't get one person to say you were a nut, you know. Well, here they are. They're all teaching online. So I asked the kids, how do they like this? I thought that was important. And we actually have been taking polling of the children, which is, by the way, you need to do that on occasion because children have I've had some experience talking to them about that, and they say good things. When we did that, it's running about 60 to 70% want to be back in school. Another about 15 or 20% want to do some distance learning and some in school. And then the other ones want to do 10% or so, 10 to 15% want to do just distance learning. So it's overwhelming that kids want to be back in the classroom. And the reasons are, these are not going to surprise you or any of the teachers that are listening, but the reasons are we like, if we have a problem or trouble, our teacher can come to my desk and show me how to work on it. That's a very common thing I heard. And then others is I miss my classmates. You know, I miss being in school. I miss the social. I miss Susie. I miss John. You know, whatever. They miss the social interactions, and both of those are important to children as they develop. You know, to be able to get along with other people and be knowledgeable. So those things are a result of public education, and it's really I think without question, the teachers have stepped up and the superintendents and principals to an extent that was unimaginable even 90 days ago.
Yes.
But now, when we get through with all of this, there will be some spots for distance learning, but it is not going to replace the school building and the teachers standing in front of those children.
I think there's a lot of students that will be happy to hear that. And with that, as we move forward in reimagining education and thinking about the fall and school opening, with what you just said in mind, how does that look in the fall?
Nobody knows. Straight answer to that. I'm going around in August, and I'm hoping to see the band practicing and you know, the cheer team working out and the football players working out, and you know, we want to see everybody back in school, and I'm hopeful. We would not be prudent in talking with superintendents. I've had a number of meetings with them. We would not be prudent not to plan for a recurrence of the event. Lesser recurrence, maybe there's all kinds of discussions going on. For example, you may run 2 schools the same day. You know, somebody come in at 7 to 12, everybody have lunch, and somebody come in from 1 to 5. You know, particularly if they weren't allowing sports, for example, you could do that, and you'd basically be teaching classes of 10 versus 20 or whatever it happens to be, and social distancing everybody. You could see a whole lot of different things. You could see the school year start earlier, where and there's some reason for that. I met with, I think, most every superintendent in the Delta yesterday morning for about an hour. There are probably 20 or 30 superintendents on the phone from everywhere in the Delta. And they were worried, and it's part of what we do, just speaking with superintendents, you learn a lot. They were concerned what they refer to as an education gap, which means that when I polled them and asked them, how many of your kids don't have a computer or access to a computer of some sort? Well, it ranged from 30 to 60%. So they're giving paper ones out on school bus routes, or mom's picking them up, or dad's, or whatever. And that's not the same as these Zoom things that are going on in a lot of school districts. There's a lot going on where kids are looking in and getting their education over the internet. We don't have internet capabilities everywhere that we got kids. You know, those aren't matched up yet. And some places, when we were talking to the superintendents, they were concerned about they may have a computer in the home, but they got 3 kids, so they can't use it at the same time. So there are a whole lot of issues that I've been actually working on this morning on some solutions for those, and I had started a couple of several weeks ago, about expanding the broadband coverage in Mississippi and working with cooperatives who have been authorized to do that, as well as others, about how we can make the internet more accessible to people. And then there are some technology hardware issues. People don't have a Chromebook or Apple Book or anything else, or maybe even not even a computer at their home. So we have some issues with that. A lot of schools give those away at the first of the year, and they can't pick them back up, and they pay a little insurance and whatever. But some school districts aren't financially viable enough to do that. So that is an education gap that is worrisome to my Delta superintendents. And they worried about getting tested next year and having a grade maybe that didn't reflect the hard work they had done during the year, because they skipped the last 2 or 3 months.
Right. Well, you know what? You brought up a great subject. Actually, we have a caller on the phone that wanted to touch base on the broadband. Let's welcome Mike to the show right now from Pontotoc. Mike, you have a question or comment for Lieutenant Governor?
Yes. Good morning, Mr. Hosemann. My question is about broadband service through the public utilities. I'm in Pontotoc County, and our public utility, Pontotoc Electric Power Association, just decided not to offer broadband. They priced it quite high. They got a fairly low response rate, and then held virtually a private meeting with their board of directors and made a decision that is unfavorable for those of us who'd like to have better internet service. I know you don't have a magic wand, but I wish there was a way that you or the state could help extend high-speed internet to the more rural areas like ours, where we don't have cable or DSL, and the cell service is pretty spotty in itself, and satellite internet is certainly not a solution. So that's my comment, and I'll get off there and listen to your answer.
Thank you, Mike.
First of all, the individual co-ops were given the authority to go forward, just as Mike is talking about there. They have been polling. I think 3 or 4 have agreed to go forward. This is the first one I've discovered that decided not to proceed. That's number one. Number two, this is an economic issue for the co-ops and for the people they serve. So they can go forward and build out. They can build it out 10 miles to one house if you want them to. It's just how much money you're going to spend. It is not feasible, I think, for us to have go to the end of the gravel road and have internet service. We're not there yet from a cost perspective. There may be some other way. Satellite, you mentioned, is not as good, and it's not. But where we can, which would be the communities like Pontotoc, the city, and surrounding area, we should be doing that. And in my conversations with the co-ops, I have emphasized the first person to get it is the school. Now, we'll be meeting back. They have had a significant loss here in the last 3 weeks, and I know y'all haven't experienced as much in Pontotoc, but in the Delta, and particularly in South Mississippi, our cooperatives have been crippled by the storms of just waves of tornadoes. They are heavily involved in putting back, some cases, like 12 miles of poles have been knocked down. So they're basically redoing their whole grid. So it wasn't a time for us to be talking to them about how we're going to expand when they basically are in survival mode with so many customers, tens of thousands of people out of power. They'll finish that, as they always do. They're quite confident, and they'll finish that. And when they do, I think early this summer we'll be having a discussion. I have asked for where the gaps are, and I've also asked other major suppliers, Comcast and others, where is their gap in the coverage. I want to address that. And some of that, there are funds that are coming in the CARES Act to the state that specifically discuss distance learning as a capability of financing. So we may be able to come closer by assisting individuals in making that decision to go forward. We may be able to help them. I don't think certainly there's not enough money to pay for all of Mississippi to get built out for high-speed internet, but there may be ways to round it closer to where the co-ops can make a business decision that would not be so risky for them. The last part of that, as we look at the whole broadband issue in the other. Everybody needs to understand in the community that there is very little future, either business or economic or education, without high-speed internet. That should be a given. So, when people say there's very little interest in me getting high-speed internet, I'm not willing to pay $35 a month or $60 a month or whatever. What you're doing there is condemning your county or your town to being behind everyone else. You're not going to be able to attract and maintain businesses there. Your kids are not going to get as good an education there. All those things are happening. The world is moving away from you. And so when we talk about co-ops getting together and doing this, there is no decision as to whether or not to do it. It's just the economic issue. Because if there is a decision in each case not to provide any broadband, even to New Albany and Pontotoc and smaller towns and whatever in Mississippi, then that decision will really handicap them for the future. And I see that, and I'm perfectly willing to discuss it, and have been discussing it with our co-ops, and we'll be discussing again, and we may have a little money to help them.
Right. Well, thank you. That was wonderful. Thank you, Mike, for that wonderful question. And thank you, of course, to our guest today, Lieutenant Delbert Hosemann. When we get back from our quick break, we'll continue talking with Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann on issues that are happening around the state with education. And we'll talk about some programs that he has implemented to reach out to educators and students. And then we'll look at the future of Mississippi and how that may look moving forward. If you have a question or comment, give us a call at 1-877-MPB-RING. That's 1-877-672-7464. Stay tuned. This is Mississippi Education Connection, only on MPB Think Radio.
Hey, this is Malcolm White with the Mississippi Arts Commission. I'm one of the hosts of the Mississippi Arts Hour, the arts interview show on Think Radio. Every week, myself or one of my fellow hosts bring you in-depth interviews with different creative Mississippians. We talk with visual artists, musicians, writers, as well as people who help bring the arts to their communities. We hear about how each artist learned their craft and get some insight into their creative process. You can hear the Arts Hour every Sunday at 5 p.m. on Think Radio, or listen anytime by subscribing to the show through your favorite podcast app.
This is an MPB Think Radio podcast.
Good morning. This is Mississippi Education Connection. I'm your host, Michelle McAdoo, along with my co-host, Tara Wren, Director of Education with MPB. Today, we've been speaking with Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann. Now, if you have questions or comments for the show, give us a call at 1-877-MPB-RING. That's 1-877-672-7464. Now, Lieutenant Governor Hosemann, before the break, you told us that you have had in-depth conversations with superintendents all over the state. And yesterday you had a great conversation with superintendents in North Mississippi, in the Delta, actually. And given that, we know there's lots of conversation about pass or fail or forgiving or relaxing even accountability guidelines. Who will graduate and who will not? What are your thoughts on how this school year will end or should end, given that most of the state did not have adequate internet service?
Well, that's being made by the people that should be making it, which is your teachers, principals, and superintendents. They're going through the process now. What I hear is that every grade that you had going in stays the same, and you're given the ability to take additional courses, tests, or information, or write papers, that kind of thing, to improve your grade. But nobody's going to go down. That's mainly what I'm hearing. But there's no state law about this,
right, and
there shouldn't be. Each one of these districts is different, with different capabilities and different students and different. I mean, everything's different in each one of them. There's 139 of them, I think. So anyway, they'll make that decision on a state by state basis. But nobody's talking about penalizing kids. I mean, they're not like saying whatever.
Right, I agree.
And one of the discussions I had, one of the principals said, look, when we're looking at this, if Johnny's not ready to go forward, we're not going to take him forward. You know, we know enough right now going through March to know that Johnny's not prepared to go to the 5th grade or something. He needs to stay. And so they're making those decisions, and it's best left on an individual basis, I think.
Well, Lieutenant Governor, we do know that there will be many seniors that will happily move on, and we also believe that our job market will change, and the types of jobs that are available today and needed will be different, and most will look different. So talk a little bit about the changing job market and the types of jobs seniors leaving high school this year should probably be looking forward to pursue.
Well, there's some discussions about as much as 30% to 50% of the jobs that are available today will not be here in 2030. But not one of those discussions ever involves not being computer savvy. Whether or not you're building a car for Nissan or Toyota, two of our major car manufacturers, if you're building a car, you're going to know how to run a computer. Everything, it doesn't matter. Ships, you go to the Delta and you get in one of the combines or something, it's all computerized. And planting is all computerized. And drones are out checking fields. And it's the whole gamut of how we do business is becoming faster and more intelligence being given to the computer. So your computer sciences and your coding classes, that's a big thing. People who can code are pretty much guaranteed a job in the future economy of Mississippi, because they can code how a machine makes a mask or how a machine makes a car. All of that will revolve around the computer and a technology standpoint. So I think those are all really good things. You still have to read and write and arithmetic and be able to add and do fractions and projections and that kind of thing. You're always going to have to do that, and so I think those are very basic. But when you look out in the future of Mississippi, you'll see, like, for example, we have a huge truck driving group here, great companies that run trucks all over. They got to have drivers, and those drivers are making $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, some of them $90,000 a year driving trucks for things. And that's very, very important. Gradually, over the next decade, there'll be driverless trucks. And so those people will then need to be able to program the truck to leave with bananas from Gulfport and go to Chicago. So you'll see, I think, some basic skills that are here today will evolve into other skills. Since you've driven a truck, you'll be able to know what the truck's supposed to be doing, so you can write the computer to send it up there. So anyway, I think you'll see when you have your basic education, and particularly your technology parts of your basic education, you'll see some real opportunities. The other thing is we have a paucity of kids and young men and women that are coming forward that have hand skills. Only 25% of our children actually get a baccalaureate degree or a 4-year degree, and about another 40% get a degree from a community college. So a lot of our children need to be able to be able to weld, or be able to build a cabinet, or be able to build a building, or all the things that you do in the hands part of those technical skills that come from HVAC and all of that. All of those things are going to have tremendous job openings, and have them now. There's not as many people who can put together an HVAC system, AC system. So you'll see us in Mississippi, and we were on a tear about that until about 2 months ago, to have career technical co-located with our schools, where somebody, I can tell you, a welder makes more than a lieutenant governor does. I can just tell you, and a plumber makes about twice what the lieutenant governor does. So whatever, if you're making an economic decision, I could be a plumber when I would be lieutenant governor.
They're needed, and they will always be needed. I like that point. We actually have 2 callers on the phone. Lieutenant Governor, let's go first to Belle in Yazoo County. Good morning, Belle.
Good morning. I have two questions, and I'll try to do them as quickly as possible. I'm a retired teacher, and I'm wondering if the State Department of Education has planned in where for returning students, if the teachers will pick up on the fourth 9-week lesson plans. The other is, since we don't have a vaccine yet and this thing might hit again next winter, will they have some kind of provision where if there is another shut-in, if maybe they could come back and finish the school year out in June, because it really doesn't get hot in Mississippi until about mid-June. Thank you. I'll take it off the air.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you from all the children that you educated, no doubt, for years and years, and they're all prospering now due to your devotion to teaching. So we appreciate what you did, and we'd love it if you'd come back. We have a teacher shortage, so if you could come back to work, that'd be great too. On the two issues that she raised, first, there are discussions going on about opening the school year earlier in order to complete work that may not have been done and to cover this education gap. Now, the Department of Education will make those kinds of decisions, not us. On this year, I don't think that there's any motion towards having schools stay open until June. That was discussed at one point, but everything, for example, some of our young men and women go in the Army, and they go in the Army the first week in June. So if you waited till took June classes, they wouldn't have received their high school diploma, which is a prerequisite to getting in most instances. So there were barriers to us doing that, to extending. And I never heard any serious discussions from any of my superintendents about extending the school year. Now, some of them are going to have graduation in June in the stadiums or wherever, so there may be some school activities, but I didn't see the actual education component being extended. Next year, I think I'm going to be surprised if they're not given some options about the timing of opening the school year and whether or not they can come back to cover some of this education gap. And this is a good time to discuss one other thing, since she's bringing it up. Some schools are going to 4 9-week classrooms. Now, they go 9 weeks, and then they skip 3 weeks, and they go 9 weeks and skip 3 weeks, and they're off for, they have an October break, a Christmas break, kind of a spring break, and a summer break. But in there, the schools like Corinth has done this already, and other schools are beginning that process to go, I don't want to call it year-round, I'm just calling it as 4 semesters of 9 weeks. Those appear to have been exceptionally successful in Corinth. When I have been there at least 3 and maybe 4 times now, I actually looked at their test one time when I was there. They were year-end tests they were giving them. They use a Cambridge system, which is different, but the tests were very sophisticated, and they were exams that were not multiple choice, but where you had to write an answer. They'd give you 2 pages to write a response. Like on a history class, it would have been what happened to Italy after they aggregated all of their 7 city-states in 1910. What was the result? So it was a discussion more than it was, what year did the war end or something. And so it's been very successful there. The teachers and the students and the community has really bought into that. And I think if you're looking at 5 or 10 years from now, you'll look at other schools that may do that may start effectively a year round. The one question I had about that, I had 22 teachers in a room up in Corinth and no administrators, and I said, okay, what's wrong with this? Where are the problems? Do y'all like this really, or is this something somebody came up with? To a person, they liked it, and they talked about the ability to educate, and they were upfront with me about starting in August, and they said, by March or April of the year, we're pretty much sick of the kids, and they're pretty much sick of us, and we're about worn out, and they're about worn out, and we have found that where we teach 9 weeks and have 3 weeks off, we get rejuvenated, and we feel we're better teachers. I thought that was very interesting. Then they said, where our students struggle in a class, and I have several struggle, during that 3-week period, I bring them in, and I do my remedial work about the specific topic right then, as opposed to try to catch up in a summer school like we used to do or something like that. So they thought that the kids had a better chance, and that this intellectual curiosity would last 9 weeks, and then they had a break, and then they came back and they started a new class, and they thought the intellectual curiosity and just the momentum of the school was very positive. So I think looking out, you'll see more school districts think about that. I think there's 2 or 3 of them looking at it now, or starting parts of it now. You may see that in the future as being part of this. Now, what that does is, going back to this question, if we have this horrible 2 or 3 months off, we basically only skip that one part of the quarter, that 1 quarter of the, we can pick back up with that particular quarter in the summer or whatever. So it would ameliorate the effects of this kind of issue.
All right. Thank you for that.
That's going way deep. I don't know where y'all.
No.
Still listening to this, they probably all hung up by now.
No, we actually have 2 callers holding. We have Cheryl from Diamond Head and Sharon from Jackson. Do not hang up, ladies. We will get to you right after our last break. Now, if you're just joining us, yes, we are talking with Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann. If you want to get your questions in or comment in, phone lines are still open. The number to call is 1-877-MPB-RING. That's 1-877-672-7464. Stay tuned. This is Mississippi Education Connection.
No matter if you use an app to start your car or still have a flip phone, Everyday Tech can decipher today's technology for tomorrow's solutions. Subscribe now to the podcast using any podcast app or the MPB Public Media app.
This is an MPB Think Radio podcast.
Good morning. This is MPB Think Radio. You're listening to Mississippi Education Connection. I'm your host, Michelle McAdoo, along with my co-host, Tara Rend, Director of Education with MPB. All right. Well, if you're just joining us today, we've been discussing the Mississippi legislature's response to the education amid the coronavirus pandemic with our guest today, Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann. Now, it's not too late to get your question or comment in. The number to call is 1-877-MPB-RING. That's 1-877-672-7464. We're going to go back to the phone lines as promised and speak with Cheryl from Diamond Head, Mississippi. Good morning, Cheryl.
Good morning.
What's your question or comment?
Yes, it has to do with rural broadband. I know we've circled away from that, but I live in an area that has good support now, but previously was in a geographically nearby area, but it might as well have been in a different time zone. And as recently as like 2018, you couldn't get it. You could only get 56K or satellite, yet walk to a school that had high speed. So my question has to do with why these disparities exist when, like, if a phone can receive phone service, regular phone service, DSL comes over a 2-wire phone line. I don't understand how the telecom companies can say that they can't support DSL at a minimum to these homes in the 21st century, and why the money from the Connect America Fund doesn't seem to be filling that gap. We're subsidizing billions a year to telecoms, and it doesn't seem to be having a lot of impact on the rural communities.
Governor Hosemann, would you like to address that?
Well, I think she's in the Mississippi Power would be servicing her down there, but I'm not sure they serve most of the coast. I think that's where hers would be. And I'm not going to try to get into the technical part. I'm not that good on the technical. I know that when I've seen broadband here that I watched be laid in Jackson, it was by a cable underground. And I know that they have a separate cable from the telephone or electrical service. And I know that they have been discussing whether when they lay cable to rural Mississippi, whether it would be hung on these on the telephone poles as other things are, or should you run it underground? The underground is much more expensive. Going through the on telephone poles is not as expensive, but the utilities own those telephone poles, so they can rent the space on them to somebody that would want to have the internet provided. I don't know about the DL lines and how those work or don't work. I just know the ones I've seen have all been basically in a cable form.
Oh, right. Well, thank you for that question, Cheryl. Of course, stay tuned to Mississippi Education Connection or your news, and let's see what comes out of that. Before we have to go, Lieutenant Hosemann, let's talk about your Healthy at Home K-12 program and your distance learning with Delbert. Tell us how those programs quickly, what they're about, and maybe share. Tara has a great story she wanted to share from one of your students on the Healthy at Home project.
Well, this one is from Lyric at from Span Elementary, and I'll just read a snippet. Lyric says, "If I were a lawmaker, the first thing I would do is set aside an amount of money to care for citizens so I would be able to buy new spaces for testing for COVID and vaccinations." She goes on to say, "I would ask anyone if they could do a face mask tutorial using cloth, clothes, and T-shirts, and whatever." And then she ends by saying, "We don't want to put others at risk and have the virus multiply drastically. So I would beg everyone to survive the current situation because we all need each other." And she put that in bold.
Wow. And what grade is she in again? And what school?
She's in elementary, Span Elementary School.
All right.
That's one of my favorite schools. I read there for when we have reading day. Dr. Seuss and all like that, I always go over and read it. I have been doing that for probably 12 or 13 years now. Wow. And I've always enjoyed there. They had a great teacher over there I went to a lot of times. She's moved over to Rankin County now. But we sent those out. Leah did a great job in putting all that together. We sent it out for use because we knew kids would be at home. They'd get bored a little bit on the distance learning, and they may want to do something else. And I knew their moms and dads would want to have something for them to do. So we sent that out. We have gotten great responses from kids just writing what you would think is be common sense, and as they say, out of the mouths of babes comes real knowledge. And we have enjoyed reading those. We post some of them, on our. We have about 300,000 people that look at our email list and whatnot from the state, and we post a lot of that, and it's refreshing, I think, to see the kids that are really 10 or 12 years old are having that kind of thought process. I had on my many classes that I go to, I had a couple of questions I thought were very interesting. One was in an AP history course, and the student asked, "Where did the money go?" Now you think about that. What did somebody take all of our parents' money? What happens? And so I explained to them, basically sophomore economics, the turn of money through the economy is how the government gets any money. We don't get any tax unless you buy groceries or you buy a car or that kind of thing. So that funds us, but everybody holding their money and staying at home and not going to a restaurant or whatever, then those people don't get money, and then they don't buy other things, and so it multiplies when you stop an economy like here's the same amount of money, but people aren't spending it. And then the other part of that, we talked a little bit about the government dropping $2 trillion or however how much they've dropped in here, dropped some more yesterday. So about how much money the government has dropped in there. Another question that came out, one of the kids asked me, what, in pandemics and all this testing, what part of your constitutional rights do you have to give up for a pandemic? Now think about that. Now this is a 15-year-old child or young man or woman asking that kind of question, and of course hopefully the answer is none, but you really, there are thinking out there, and our kids are thinking out there, and we need to listen to them. They're the future.
All right. Well, you know what? The last few minutes of the show, thank you again, Lieutenant Governor, for joining us today. What would you say to our graduating seniors? They're all listening to you right now. What words of encouragement do you have for our seniors and Mississippians?
They deserve a graduation, and I want them to have one. And so I'm encouraging all of the superintendents, and they're working on this kind of thing, to have some kind of graduation. I know y'all were talking about, putting on your dress, putting your tuxedo on. I think those prom night is a big thing, and it is important. I don't know that we're going to make that this year, but graduation is the most important part, not the party. It's the fact that you have the knowledge to proceed in life and be competitive for raising a family and taking care of yourself and contributing to your community. So that's the real important here. I'd like to go at it at the other side, the other way. I hope, and I don't think, that any class will ever graduate during a pandemic but this one. So you're really special.
Well, thank you again for joining us today. We've come to the end of another great show. Of course, we want to thank our guest, Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann, for joining us today. Now, if you didn't get to hear the show in its entirety and you'd like to hear it again, listen to our podcast on your favorite podcast app or download our MPB Public Media app. This has been a production of MPB Think Radio in conjunction with MPB's Educational Services Department.